6:42 a.m., February 11th, 1944. Somewhere outside Hearne, Texas. The sun isn't fully up yet, just a thin red line stretching across the horizon, glowing faintly through the morning mist. Cold dew clings to the barbed wire, and the diesel cough of a U.S. Army transport truck breaks the quiet. Inside that truck, 34 German prisoners sit shoulder to shoulder. Dust-streaked uniforms, scraped boots, and the sour smell of dried sweat from weeks of captivity. Most are Afrika Korps, veterans of El Alamein, men who once believed they would never see the inside of an American camp. Now they're here, and they're terrified to step out. The truck lurches over a rut, sending helmets tapping together. Somebody mutters a curse in low German. Another rubs a cracked knuckle with his thumb, an unconscious habit, the kind men develop in long captivity. Lieutenant Hans Vogel keeps his eyes on the slatted boards of the truck bed. He can hear boots outside. American boots. Calm, unrushed, almost casual. He tries not to stare at the guard closest to him, the tall Texan with the Thompson slung at his chest and a half-burned cigarette stuck to his lower lip. The guard doesn't sneer. He doesn't shout. He doesn't even seem particularly interested in them. But Vogel's stomach is a knot anyway. He knows the stories German soldiers traded on the front lines, stories about revenge, beatings, starvation. Stories whispered around desert fire pits after the surrender at Tunisia. Stories about what the Americans would do once you were loaded onto their ships. The truck brakes hard, the engine cuts, and silence falls so sharply you could feel it. A U.S. sergeant thumps the back wall twice. "Let's go. 2 at a time. Move." The tone isn't angry, just firm, the way you'd call out instructions during a drill. Still, several POWs flinch. The tailgate swings downward and morning air rushes in, warmer than they expected. The smell hits next. Dust, cut grass, something faintly metallic from the fencing. Vogel blinks into the light and sees a camp that does not match their nightmares. Neatly painted wooden barracks, straight gravel walkways, American flags hanging still in the quiet air. Not a single guard shouting at them. No dogs snapping at their heels. Instead, a young MP with freckles and a spotless uniform lifts his clipboard and says almost politely, "Welcome to Camp Hearne. Form a line. You'll be processed by barracks." One of the POWs whispers under his breath, "Is this some trick?" Another murmurs, "Amerikanische Propaganda." But as they step down, boots sinking slightly into the red Texas soil, the surprises keep coming. To their right, just behind the first fence, they spot a group of prisoners already inside, perhaps 100 of them, walking freely within the compound. Some wear makeshift baseball mitts. One is jogging around a dirt track. 2 more argue over what looks unmistakably like a POWs, radio schematic scratched onto a piece of cardboard. Vogel freezes. A radio? His mind jumps back to the desert. His men hunched around a short-range set with a battery that died every other afternoon. Radios meant power, efficiency, control. Here, a prisoner is casually sketching one beneath a shade awning, like this is some technical school. A corporal behind Vogel mutters, "This can't be right." Another POW stares at a structure at the far end. It looks like a cafeteria, the kind you'd expect at a civilian university, not a wartime camp. Windows propped open, steam drifting out in soft white ribbons. Then a smell washes across them. fresh bread. Someone in line audibly gasps. A few POWs exchange long, uncertain looks, like they're waiting for fists to fall or rifles to be raised, like this abundance is bait and the harshness is still coming. But it doesn't. Instead, the same MP gestures them forward and says matter-of-factly, "Breakfast is at 0700. You'll be assigned a work detail after intake. Follow procedure, and you'll be fine." Fine. The word lands strangely on Vogel's ears. Fine is not what they expected. As their line inches forward, he notices something else. The Americans aren't hurried. They're not tense. The MPs check papers, stamp forms, direct men toward medical checks. Everything runs with the steadiness of a factory line. Controlled, predictable, orderly, almost normal. And that normality is unsettling, because every POW here arrived expecting punishment. Instead, they're confronted with routine, with structure, with quiet, and with something else, something they can't name yet, but can feel crawling under their skin. American abundance. Something so casual here that it feels unreal. A whistle blows. Somewhere inside the compound, a baseball cracks off a wooden bat. The sound rings out across the Texas morning like a strange challenge to everything these men thought they knew about their captors, about the enemy. Vogel swallows hard. If this is just the beginning, what's waiting for them inside? The line moves slowly through the intake gate, past a neatly handwritten sign that reads, Camp Hearne, U.S. Army, Provost Marshal General. The POWs try to keep their faces steady, but the truth is written in every sideways glance and every tightened jaw. They are bracing for the moment the illusion breaks. But it doesn't. Instead, a sergeant directs them toward a low wooden building with screened windows and double doors propped open. The smell drifting out is unmistakably warm, rich, and unreal for prisoners of war. Coffee. Not burned barley substitute. Not thin, watery rations like in North Africa. Actual coffee. Vogel's pulse jumps. One POW, a sandy-haired mechanic named Mueller, whispers, "This is impossible. They're feeding us like their own men." Vogel doesn't answer. He can't. His throat is too tight. Inside the cafeteria, everything is bright, clean, loud in a strangely familiar way. Tin trays clanking, cooks shouting half-jokes across the serving line, the hum of ceiling fans fighting the Texas heat. The POWs stop just inside the doorway, frozen, like they've stepped into the wrong building. Then a corporal at the end of the line barks. American sharp, not angry. "Let's move. Grab a tray." An MP even demonstrates, lifting one of the metal trays with a dull clang, then sliding it forward. Like this is a school lunch, not a POW meal. The Germans awkwardly copy him, and the surprises keep coming. Ladles dip into scrambled eggs, still steaming. Metal tongs drop bacon, actual bacon, onto trays. A cook in a sweat-darkened apron spoons grits and biscuits like this is Sunday breakfast. Vogel stares down at his tray in disbelief. He hasn't seen a meal like this since before El Alamein. Behind him, someone mutters, "Are we prisoners or guests?" Another answers, low and conflicted, "Guests don't have barbed wire." Still, they eat. And as soon as they eat, they start noticing something they didn't expect at all. The cafeteria is full of German voices. Not fearful, not angry, almost relaxed. A group of long-term prisoners sit together at a table, uniforms faded to gray. One reads an English newspaper with slow concentration. Another scribbles in a notebook. A third waves a crust of bread at a friend and laughs. Actual laughter, like something normal people do in a normal town. A long-term POW at the next table looks up at Vogel and his group. "New arrivals?" he asks in German, accent thick but friendly. Vogel nods stiffly. The man smirks, sets down his fork, and says, "You'll stop thinking everything is a trick in about a week." Vogel frowns. "We were told." Yes, we all were. The beatings, the revenge, all of it." The man shrugs and picks up his fork again. "Americans prefer rules. Follow them, and life is strange, but predictable." That single word lands again. Predictable. Predictable is the last thing they expected from an enemy nation fueled by wartime anger. A bell rings somewhere near the kitchen. Conversation quiets. An MP at the front stands beside a bulletin board where new notices have been pinned. Rules, schedules, announcements, even something about a camp theater club. He clears his throat and calls out with military precision. "Attention! All new arrivals will report to orientation at 1300. Work assignments posted by barracks. Baseball game scheduled tonight at 1800. Volunteers welcome." Baseball game. The room stirs with a ripple of half-whispered confusion. Some POWs raise eyebrows. Others exchange baffled shrugs. Mueller leans toward Vogel. "Baseball? Here." Vogel can't get the words out. The contradiction is too sharp. They're prisoners, under guard, behind wire. But they're being told to attend a baseball game like they've enrolled in some American summer camp. Then another reveal hits. As the POWs scrape up the last of their eggs, a soft hiss crackles overhead. A radio. A real working radio wired into the cafeteria rafters. Static fades, replaced by the warm baritone of a stateside announcer. "And now for the morning news from Washington." Every POW freezes. They were never allowed to listen to Allied broadcasts in North Africa. Even hearing a snatch of one could earn punishment. Here, the Americans let the radio play openly, drifting down like harmless background noise. One of the German veterans speaks without looking up from his tray. "You'll get used to that too." Vogel's mind spins. Rules, order, routine, radios, cafeterias, baseball games. What kind of POW camp is this? Before he can piece the puzzle together, the cafeteria doors swing open and a different kind of sound enters. Boots on wooden steps, purposeful and heavy. A U.S. officer steps in. His uniform is crisp, his expression unreadable, and the way he studies the room makes Vogel's stomach tighten. Because whatever comes next, it's not just breakfast. It's the moment they learn what life here will truly be like. The officer steps fully into the cafeteria, the wood floor creaking beneath his polished boots. He's tall, lean, probably mid-40s, with silver at his temples and a clipboard tucked under one arm. His uniform carries the insignia of the U.S. Army Provost Marshal General's office, the people responsible for every German POW on American soil. His presence quiets the room instantly. He surveys the new arrivals with a steady, appraising look. Not hostile, not warm, just precise. The kind of man who expects the world to run on procedures. "Gentlemen," he begins, voice clear and edged with Texas gravel. "My name is Major Franklin Hale. You will see me often. Vogel straightens in his seat. So do the others. Major Hale continues. In this camp, discipline is non-negotiable. You follow rules, you work your assignments, you do not cause trouble. In return, he pauses, letting the silence settle. You will be treated in accordance with the Geneva Convention. No more, no less. The phrasing is simple, but the effect is enormous. Several POWs glance around, almost embarrassed by their earlier fear. Mueller exhales shakily through his nose. Somebody mutters a quiet prayer of relief. Hale gestures toward the bulletin board. You will have opportunities for education, exercise, recreation. But understand this clearly. These are privileges, not entitlements. He taps the clipboard once, an unspoken period. Then his tone shifts, just slightly. Texas is hot. Work details can be demanding. Respect the guards. Respect each other. Follow the schedule, and you'll find this camp can be manageable. Manageable. The word ripples like a strange echo. The major nods once, turns, and leaves the way he came. Efficient, unhurried, without theatrics. The door closes behind him, and for the first time since they arrived in America, the POWs feel something unsettling. Structure. Not leniency, not kindness, but structure built so firmly that it leaves no room for chaos. Outside, the reality deepens. By midday, the new arrivals march across the compound under a sun already heating the Texas clay. Dust kicks up under their boots. Insects buzz in the dry grass along the fence line. They're led to orientation, another impossibly orderly scene. A chalkboard, benches, translated handouts printed in clear German. A corporal with a pointer running through camp protocol, like a school teacher. One line in particular makes Vogel blink. Work assignments include farming, laundry, carpentry, sanitation, kitchen, and maintenance. Work. Actual work. Not punishment. Contributing labor in exchange for privileges. Mudler nudges Vogel. This is nothing like the British camps. Vogel nods slowly. He'd heard rumors of rough handling under British custody, hard marches, sparse food. Other stories he hoped were exaggerations. But here, the Americans operate like the entire war is a machine, and the POW system is one of its gears. The first work detail. At 1500 hours, Vogel and his group are assigned to the farm unit outside the main compound, a set of fenced fields where POWs tend corn, tomatoes, and beans under MP supervision. Two guards walk alongside them, rifles slung casually over their shoulders, chatting about last week's rain. One POW whispers, "They barely watch us, but that's not true. They watch everything, just without the theatrics." The guard's eyes scan steadily. Their posture stays alert, not aggressive, not fearful, simply trained. The work itself is simple. Clearing weeds, checking irrigation lines, moving crates. Harder than it looks under the Texas sun, but not brutal. What shocks the Germans most is the pacing. No shouting, no rushing, no needless punishment when someone slows down. Just work. Plain, ordinary work. At one point, a young POW stumbles and drops a crate. Before Vogel can help him, an MP steps forward, not with anger, but with calm concern. "You all right? Heat's rough today. Take a minute." The POW looks stunned. He nods numbly and sits in the shade of the truck. Vogel wipes sweat from his brow with the back of his sleeve. "They treat us like workers," he murmurs. Mueller squints at the horizon. "Or like men." It's a small sentence, but it rattles them, because it suggests a reality they hadn't dared consider. The Americans don't hate them. Not individually. Not personally. They're prisoners of war. Nothing more. Nothing less. The evening surprise. By the time the sun dips low and the air cools, they're marched back to the compound for evening assembly. The day should end here. Showers, dinner, sleep. But something else is happening. A crowd gathers around a dirt field, marked by white chalk lines. POWs mingle with MPs. A baseball bat lies across a bench. 2 guards chalk the batter's box. A posted sign reads simply, "Baseball, 1800 hours. All welcome." Vogel's heart skips. He'd heard Americans loved baseball. He'd never imagined he'd stand in a POW camp watching fellow prisoners join a scrimmage. The long-term POWs look excited. Some warm up their arms. A few tease each other in German, switching to rough English when calling out to the MPs. And the Americans answer back, grinning, tossing friendly insults, like these Germans are teammates, not sworn enemies from the desert. Vogel stands frozen at the fence, unable to process the contradiction. War outside. But this feels like something from another universe. Before he can speak, a baseball rolls to his feet. A German prisoner jogs over and picks it up, giving Vogel a quick smile. "You'll play next week," the man says. "Everyone does." "How? Why would they allow this?" Vogel asks quietly. The POW shrugs. "Remember the Major's words. Discipline. Rules. That includes fair treatment." He tosses the ball in the air once, catches it, and jogs back to the field. The game is about to start, and somewhere deep inside, Vogel feels the first fragile crack in his understanding of America. The first hint that this country operates on principles entirely different from the war he fought. But the real shock, it hasn't arrived yet. Because tomorrow morning, he'll step into a place that will shatter every remaining expectation he still holds. Reveille snaps the camp awake at 0600. A bugle's sharp notes cut across the Texas air, bouncing between barracks and fading into the early light. Vogel sits up slowly, blinking at the unfamiliar ceiling. The barracks smell of wood, sun-warmed planks, and the faint detergent from yesterday's laundry detail. He expected rough bunks, maybe straw sacks. Instead, sturdy metal frames, clean sheets, wool blankets neatly folded, windows propped open for air. It feels wrong to feel comfortable. Around him, men stretch, groan quietly, pull on shirts and boots. A few trade hushed morning jokes, thin, cautious humor born from relief more than ease. And then it happens. A soft hiss, a pop of static, and a voice drifting through the barracks. "This morning's broadcast from KTRH Houston." Vogel freezes mid-lace. A radio, inside the barracks, turned on, openly, freely, like this is some dormitory, not a POW camp. The announcer continues, cheerful and steady. "Temperatures rising to the mid-70s today across central Texas. Wheat forecasts remain strong. In other news, wheat forecasts, local weather, domestic news." To a German soldier trained to expect the enemy's voice only in secret forbidden transmissions, this is surreal, unsettling, even frightening. Mueller sits upright in his bunk, Why would they let us hear this? Before Vogel can answer, a long-term POW from the opposite bunk, an older sergeant with desert-scarred hands, clears his throat. American policy, he says simply. Information isn't contraband here. Vogel frowns. Even enemy information? The sergeant snorts softly. To them, it isn't enemy information. It's just radio. Vogel feels something shift in his understanding. Not a twist, not a reveal. Something deeper. The idea that the Americans simply weren't afraid. Not of propaganda. Not of their prisoners. Not even of what they might learn. It's bold, arrogant, and strangely admirable. The camp library. After breakfast, more eggs, more coffee, more contradictions. The orientation continues. The group is escorted past workshops, laundry buildings, and gardens. They expect the usual military structures. Instead, they stop in front of a long wooden hut with a hand-painted sign. Camp Library. Open hours posted. Inside, Vogel's breath catches. Shelves. Actual shelves of books. English novels. German novels. Dictionaries. Atlases. Technical manuals. History books. Some even about Germany. A POW behind Vogel whispers, "Mein Gott." Another adds, "Why would they let us read all this?" A young MP, arms folded but relaxed, overhears and says with a small shrug, "Idle hands make trouble. Busy minds stay calm." It's such a simple answer that it almost sounds rehearsed. But there's something more in it, something intentional, a belief that structure, not brutality, keeps order. A belief that treating prisoners as thinking men, not animals, is safer for everyone involved. Vogel walks slowly between the shelves, fingertips brushing spines. He stops at a thick, worn volume of Goethe. Beneath it sits a stack of American magazine. Life, the Saturday Evening Post, Popular Mechanics. The abundance overwhelms him, not in size, in confidence. The Americans never seemed afraid the prisoners would become smarter, or informed, or culturally enriched. That level of confidence shakes him. The music that should not exist here at noon. The POWs gather for their first full camp assembly. The Texas sun hangs high. Cicadas whine. Dust rises under marching boots. On their way to formation, a strange sound carries across the compound. Music. A soft, bright melody drifting from a recreation hall. A violin, a guitar, maybe a piano. Men pause mid-step. Music in a POW camp? Not military marching songs, not patriotic drill tunes. Actual musicians playing actual instruments. Mueller's voice is barely above a whisper. Are they mocking us? Or is this allowed? A long-term prisoner answers before anyone else can. It's the camp orchestra. We built it. The Americans let us. Vogel turns sharply. An orchestra? String quartet on Wednesdays. Full ensemble on Sundays. Theater group meets twice a week. The words land like stones hitting water, each creating its own ripple. Orchestra. Theater. Sundays. Vogel swallows hard, trying to reconcile the picture. A POW camp with a library, radios, music, baseball games, education programs, and still, strict discipline, barbed wire, work details. A paradox wrapped in camouflage. The moment of realization. Their formation is called to attention. Major Hale stands before them again, clipboard under his arm, jaw set with that same precise authority. He scans the rows of POWs, some sunburned, some confused, all trying to appear steady. When he speaks, it's without ceremony. You are soldiers. Captured, yes, but soldiers. The United States honors that status as long as you honor the rules. He lets the wind carry a beat of silence. You will not be abused. You will not starve. You will not be denied information or culture. You will, however, work. You will follow commands. And you will not mistake privilege for freedom. The words strike something deep in the prisoners' chests, something they don't have a name for yet. Respect? Resentment? Relief? All tangled together. Then Hale adds one final line, almost quietly. The American way is order. Learn it, and this camp will make sense. It's not a threat. It's not a promise. It's a key. And Vogel realizes, suddenly, painfully, the Americans do not win obedience through fear. They win it through confidence, through a system that works so consistently, it leaves no room for chaos. He isn't sure if he admires it or fears it more. Before he can decide, another sound cuts across the field. A commotion near the perimeter. Guards turning their heads. Prisoners murmuring. Something is happening. Something unexpected. Something that will test everything the new arrivals think they've learned about this place. The commotion sharpens. It starts as a ripple of raised voices at the western edge of the compound, then becomes a sudden jolt of movement. Two POWs break from a work line near the tool shed and sprint toward the outer fence, boots kicking up red dirt in frantic bursts. For a split second, nobody reacts. Even the guards hesitate, not in confusion, but in that calm, calculating pause unique to trained soldiers who see danger through a disciplined lens. Then it happens. A whistle. Short. Sharp. Twice. 3 MPs pivot instantly, rifles raised, not firing, just ready. Their expressions don't shift. No shouting, no panicked threats, no gunfire ripping the air, just controlled, deliberate pursuit. The 2 escapees reach the fence, grab at the wire, then recoil with yelps as the barbs slice their palms. They try climbing anyway, desperate, trembling, scrabbling for leverage, like men who have expected brutality and have finally chosen to risk it. An MP shouts, voice firm but not angry. "Off the fence! Hands where we can see them!" The men ignore him. Blood streaks the wire as they climb another foot. A second whistle. 2 guards flank right, cutting off any chance of getting over the top. A third moves to the left to block their landing spot. The maneuver is so coordinated, so rehearsed, that even the prisoners watching from formation can feel the precision of it. Vogel's heart hammers. Mueller grips his sleeve. "Are they going to shoot?" he whispers. But the MPs don't fire. Instead, one guard lowers his rifle and steps closer, voice cutting through the heat. "You won't make it 10 yards past that fence. The brush is thick, snakes everywhere, and the sheriff's patrol rides that road every half hour. Get down." Still, the escapees cling to the top row of wire. Then Vogel sees it, the thing that unsettles him most. The guards look tired. Not cruel, not vengeful. Tired. Like men who've done this before and know exactly how it ends. One MP finally moves forward, grabs the pant leg of the lower escapee, and yanks him down onto the dirt with a thud. The second man panics, drops on his own, and tries to run. But two guards catch him quickly, pinning his arms, securing his wrists with canvas restraints. No punches, no kicks, no rifle butts, just procedure, nothing more. The entire field is silent, a held breath in the Texas air. Major Hale steps forward, hands clasped behind his back. His voice is even. "You were warned. Privilege is not freedom." He nods at the guards. They march the escapees away, toward the disciplinary barracks. Not a torture chamber, not some hidden pit. Just a building, plain and unremarkable, where the consequences are paperwork, confinement, and stricter oversight. Vogel watches the scene with a feeling he cannot name. Fear? No, not exactly. Shame? Maybe. But mostly, a realization spreading through him like cold water. These Americans don't need brutality to maintain control. Their order comes from something stronger than fear. The conversation that seals it after evening chow, when the heat finally breaks and the cicadas take over the dusk, Vogel steps outside the barracks. The sky glows purple-blue. Lamps flicker on along the walkways. Near the recreation hut, he finds the older long-term POW again. The man with the scarred hands and weary eyes. The one who always seems to know how things work. Vogel approaches him quietly. "What happens to them?" he asks. The older man shrugs. "Solitary. A hearing. They'll lose privileges for a while." "That's all? What else did you expect? A firing squad?" The man snorts softly. "Americans don't do that. Not to POWs." Vogel hesitates. "But why? We are the enemy." The older sergeant looks at him for a long moment. When he finally speaks, his voice carries a weight that only comes from experience. "They don't treat us well because they like us," he says. "They treat us well because they believe that's how a country should act, even in war." He taps a cigarette from a crumpled pack, lights it with steady fingers, and he exhales smoke into the cooling air. "That's their strength. Not their weapons, not their machines. This." He gestures toward the camp, the library lights glowing, the sound of a harmonica drifting from the mess hall steps, the rhythmic thud of a baseball hitting a glove somewhere in the distance. "This is what shocked us all the most," he finishes quietly. "Not the food, not the radios, their confidence. The belief that even their enemy should experience the American way. Order, routine, fairness, because anything less would make them weaker, not stronger." Vogel feels something settle in his chest, a truth he didn't expect to carry. Not admiration, not resentment, something heavier. Understanding. The final image. Later that night, when most of the camp sleeps, Vogel steps outside once more. The Texas sky is wide enough to swallow the world. The guard towers glow softly, lanterns swinging. Crickets hum. Somewhere far off, a radio plays faint jazz, drifting through a cracked window. Vogel stands alone, hands at his sides, staring at the fence that had once looked like a threat. Now it looks like something else. A boundary, not of cruelty, but of discipline. A line that marks not what the Americans take, but what they refuse to abandon, even for an enemy soldier. He whispers to himself, barely audible, "This country is not what we were told." a truth both unsettling and undeniable, a truth he will carry long after the war ends.